Guys, the Sahel is not going. My God, I'm so proud of these three leaders, man. Like, they're making me so proud to be an African. Because these Sahel leaders, they're definitely giving the West sleepless night and a run for their money. Like, honestly. Because you know what? Donald Trump, obviously the president of the divided states, have been, I'm telling you, banning African countries. Like, like out of maybe the 14 African countries that has been banned recently, I think 8 of them are African. And it's on purpose. It's almost like, okay, I'm getting back at you for whatever. And Niger, Bukina Faso and Mali was one of those countries. Now, you need to know that most African leaders, they just keep quiet. They kind of throw it under the rug. Nothing's happening and so on. But you know what? The three Sahel leaders say that, you know what? You might think that your people are not visiting us and so on, but we're going to ban you too. Because you know what? Most of the people that are anyway visiting the Sahel are just people that are probably wanting to take advantage of their resources, by the way. So I want you to listen to this video. I want you to actually follow this guy. I'm going to put a link of his video here because I just like him. He's Haitian. I think I shared some of his videos before. Please subscribe to his channel. He's very good at really breaking down things. Yeah, so listen to that.
Africa is not merely important, it is essential. African partnerships are critical for the Department of Defense to maintain its technological edge, accomplish its geopolitical and strategic objectives, and power our futures.
Mali, Burkina Faso are essentially matching the US's energy, as they say, aura for aura, band for band, because the US added them to this travel ban. As of today, they can't come to the United States. They have done the same. This is one of the largest travel bans to ever affect the African continent. Almost half of all African nations, citizens, cannot come to the United States without restrictions, and that is a large number. In the grand scheme of things, 67% of all these nations that are under these partial or full travel restrictions are in Africa. And that is why you see this criticism that this is a travel ban affecting mostly African and Muslim nations around the world, covers around much of the global south. And it tracks with what President Trump has said, that he is interested in permanently pausing immigration from third world nations. So many of these countries in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America from coming to the United States, and that's reflected in these continuous bans that affect many of these nations. But this reciprocal arrangement that these African nations are doing are interesting because Mali and Burkina Faso are ruled by military juntas. They are under military rulers that took over power without a democratic process. And Niger, which has also reportedly put in a similar reciprocal arrangement, is also under military ruler. They have formed their own alliance called the Alliance of Sahel States, and they have been pushing back on any kind of Western influence in their countries. So many people are supporting them for standing up to the United States.
Niger is slamming the door shut on US nationals. Reports suggest the West African nation has pulled the trigger on a total permanent ban of all US citizens. The government says it is done being treated like a security risk and is hitting back against Trump's travel restrictions.
In today's video, we're going to be talking about the latest diplomatic developments between the Trump administration and the AES, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Now, recently, Donald Trump, in the middle of December, as you can see, he put out a presidential action restricting and limiting the entry of foreign nationals to protect the security of the United States. The United States directive issued on December 16th expanded full U.S. visa bans to citizens of 5 nations other than Mali and Burkina Faso. It includes Laos, Niger, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Syria. Now, of course, as you can see, due to the fact that the birth rates in certain countries are pretty much pathetic, that's the best way I can describe them. The birth rates in certain nations for certain demographics are absolutely pathetic. They're not having enough babies to replace their workforce, to replace their elderly citizens, and their population is getting older and it's aging, and they're not having enough babies to properly meet the replacement levels. So unfortunately, because of that, they have to shut down their doors, clamp down on immigration, while at the same time opening their doors to the white immigrants. That's why Trump, for example, opened the doors for the white South Africans, the same way Joe Biden opened the door for the Ukrainian immigrants that came in by the boatloads, and the same way they've opened the doors historically for immigrants coming from places like Germany, where Donald Trump is actually from. Donald Trump is an immigrant anchor baby from German immigrant stock. The same way his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, is also an immigrant descendant of Norwegian stock. The same way the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is also an immigrant descendant of white Cuban stock, et cetera, et cetera. And I can go down the entire Trump administration, and pretty much this entire administration are nothing but white immigrant anchor babies descended from those who fled their countries for better opportunities. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. Now, following the principle of reciprocity, the nations in the Sahel, the AES, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, also issued the same exact travel restrictions against U.S. nationals, right? It's just all about keeping the same energy. That's all, right? Just keeping the same energy. And especially when you examine the current political climate in the United States, I think that, like I said before, on my previous videos, due to the outright anti-black hostility, not only from this administration, but also just the anti-black sentiment and propaganda that has been ignited as a result of this administration. I've said before in previous videos, I don't believe there should be a single U.S. military base on the continent. I don't think there should be any U.S. security agreements on the continent. I don't think there should be a single American company making money on the continent. I think they all should be banned. I believe all U.S. military personnel should be evicted from the continent. I believe all U.S. companies and their assets should be confiscated by the local African governments. That's what I feel, right? That's what I said on previous videos. Because one thing I don't like is people who are fake, right? You're not going to sit up in the United States spreading all this anti-black propaganda, and then at the same time, you want to run to Africa to make business deals. You want to run to Africa to sign security agreements. No. Go back to your country, get the hell out the continent, since you want to talk all that shit. But anyways, now, of course, when I look at the reactions on social media, of course, we see a bunch of low intelligent, low IQ, knuckle dragging barbarians who are so drunk off their alleged superiority that they believe that, oh, who cares about these insignificant nations? Who cares about these African nations, right? We don't need them, right? That's what they believe, because the average American citizen is not really too well versed when it comes to international affairs. The average American citizen doesn't really know too much about what's going on outside their immediate, local government. So when it comes to, international affairs, geopolitics, they're not really too well versed in that arena. They just simply absorb and just accept all the nonsensical propaganda that's fed to them by their government and their media. And of course, it doesn't help that the American education system is absolutely garbage, totally garbage. So the average American citizen doesn't really know too much when it comes to the balance of power, international, geopolitics, leverage, the competition for resources. They're not really too well versed. So you've seen a lot of ignorant comments on social media. For example, this person said this: biting off their noses despite their face. Not that I would ever go there, but they will sure miss that United States money, right? So these guys think that the United States is doing charity, or we're just giving out free money to African nations. We're just giving out money. Here, take our money, right? Dumbass people, man. This guy said this: pointless actions by 68 IQ sub-Saharan Africans, right? This person said, it's hilarious that these countries think that we care. We're not desperate to go to Niger or Mali. This person said, damn, I was planning to go to Burkina Faso and Mali for a suicidal sex tour. Dumbass people. So stupid, but yet so arrogant. That's a very deadly combination. To be so stupid, to be so unaware, to be a whole dumbass, but actually think that you're like intelligent and like you actually know what's going on. Like, it's one thing to be arrogant. It's one thing to be a dumbass, but to be an arrogant dumbass on top of that, like you're a total dumbass, but you're arrogant in your low intelligence. Like, that's a deadly combination. But unfortunately, that's the average white male in America and in Europe and in most places. Anyway, let's continue. This person said, a well-coordinated or widespread African ban would be a catastrophic foreign policy jump scare for Washington. America's biggest asset in Africa is not military bases or troops, but access. Any action by the United States could accelerate Africa's shift away from the United States and European orbit. Now, that's what these guys don't understand. These guys think it's African nations coming and knocking on your doors and begging for charity. No, you're the one coming and knocking on our doors, begging to make deals, begging to sign agreements, begging to do business, begging to get money together, begging to jump in bed together. You're the one begging all the goddamn time, bothering us. You're the one going around knocking on doors like a homeless beggar, like you don't got nowhere to stay. You're the one always coming bothering us, interfering in our internal affairs. We're not coming knocking on your doors begging to make deals. You the broke ass bum coming begging us to make deals. Just look at France. France is about to start the new year without a goddamn national budget, right? Why is that? Because they have lost lost their strategic influence in certain African nations. They have lost their strategic leverage in certain African nations. They have lost access to certain strategic resources that served as the engine to their economy. Now, France, what used to be a world power, one of the biggest economies in Europe, is starting the new year without a national budget, right? And the French have that same exact arrogant attitude, drowning in debt. You a broke ass bum, but that same arrogant attitude is the Americans. Oh, we don't need Africa. Africa is irrelevant. Meanwhile, you about to go into the new year without a national budget. Hey, take a look at this guy up on the screen right here, Mr. Will Stevens, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for West Africa in the United States, right? One of Trump's diplomats that he sent out to the continent earlier in the year. Let's talk about him. Under President Donald Trump, the United States has reset relations with the West Africa military leaders on a mutual back-scratching basis, bartering help fighting jihadists for the Sahel region's mineral riches. So the same people on social media talking about, oh, we don't need Africa. All we have is missionaries in Africa. We don't care about Africa. But your president, right, your emperor, your king, Donald Trump, was sending diplomats and envoys and ambassadors over to the continent, over to the Sahel earlier in the year, begging to sign agreements. As always, like I said earlier in the video, nothing but a bunch of beggars always knocking on doors, begging to sign deals. Can you please sign a deal with us, please? Always begging like a broke ass bum. Anyway, let's continue. The Trump administration sent high-level delegations this year to the Sahel in an effort to initiate security cooperation with the military governments that have recently seized power in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. The last American military operations in the region ended back in September 2024, when the U.S. AFRICOM completed the withdrawal of U.S. troops deployed in Niger, where they had been conducting intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance drone operations at the facility constructed there by the United States at a cost of more than $100 million, right? Oh, we don't need Africa, but you got $100 million drone base in Africa, and we kicked your dumb ass out, right? And you were so heartbroken over that, you sent a high-level delegation begging for it to open back up. Can you please, 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 please? Yeah, and we told you no, 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 begging ass bum.
So as you can hear, yeah. It's funny how they say we don't need you. That is the funny thing about it that most people don't realize, because in the past we have been taught, we grow up, I personally grow up knowing that these white countries are doing better than us. We are, like receiving charities and so on. But I now realize that they actually have been the one receiving charity from us, honestly speaking. Because when you look at the, at their aid or whatever they call it, it's less than the resources they are taking from us. So they act like they don't need us, but then they go behind, their citizens' back, kind of a back door, to actually back our leaders. That's what's happening. That's like you can see how the divided states are sending people to back Traore them. Oh my goodness, I am proud of the Sahel Leaders, guys, man. Anyway, guys, take care. Bye.